Entonces, acho que já estamos prontos. Eu vou me apresentar rapidamente e apresentar nossos convidados aqui. Eu sou Humberto Bocaiúva, sou Head de Marketing de BI para a Coface na América Latina. E hoje temos conosco o AJ Handa, que é o nosso CDO global, é o nosso diretor de dados. Temos também o Leonardo Oliveira, que é o nosso Head de dados aqui para a América Latina. E hoje temos também a Patrícia Godoy, que é uma convidada, ela é a responsável pela análise de crédito da Lycra, e que vai dar uma visão prática de como utilizar os dados e dos desafios que ela vem vivenciando. A gente resolveu fazer esse webinar hoje porque a gente entende que cada vez mais, a Coface entende que cada vez mais é super importante que as empresas tomem as decisões baseadas em dados. E a Coface, como uma empresa que é de seguro de crédito, com 75 anos de experiência, percebeu que muitos clientes solicitavam a metodologia, solicitavam a forma como a Coface faz análise de crédito para tomar suas próprias decisões. Então, a gente resolveu, a Coface, né, iniciou essa unidade de negócio de Business Information para servir o mercado de uma forma que todas as empresas possam se aproveitar de toda a expertise da Coface também para tomar suas decisões de crédito. Esse webinar ele vai ser trilingue. Então, eu vou falar em português na maior parte do tempo, mas vou fazer as perguntas em inglês para o AJ e para o Leonardo, e em português para a Patrícia. E eu também vou falar em português na maior parte do tempo. Para os nossos colegas hispanohablantes, voy a pedirles que, porfa, elijan el idioma espanhol e quedem já. Para os nossos colegas brasileiros, além de ouvir em português, se vocês precisarem da tradução simultânea para o inglês, elejam o idioma português e quando o AJ estiver falando, vocês podem colocar 100% no intérprete e a tradução vai ser, então, do inglês para o português. E quando eu estiver falando, eu vou pedir para vocês que, por favor, coloquem a bolinha para a esquerda para ouvirem o áudio original. Tudo bem? Bom, sem mais delongas, então, thank you, AJ, for joining us, Leonardo, same, and Patrícia, obrigado por estar conosco aqui hoje também. Para começar os trabalhos, eu queria pedir uma análise aqui dos nossos convidados sobre o ambiente de dados, como que eles estão vendo esse ambiente de dados pelo mundo afora. So, AJ, I would like to have your analysis on how you see the current global data landscape, the impacts for the business markets today. So please, if you may start.
Thanks, Humberto, and thanks for having me. As you mentioned, unfortunately, I don't understand Portuguese, but I caught most of what you're saying, which was, I'm the global head of data for Coface, and I've been with the company for about 3 years. I've spent my career in data, and the reason I'm telling you this is when I started 25 years ago, data was a very difficult thing to manage and to get. It was very new. Analytics was very new in the market, and people were still making decisions based on their gut and their intuition. And over the last 25 years, people are really starting to see the value in data-driven decisions. But what that's caused is this huge glut of data in the market now. There's too much data. It's everywhere. And so the trick now is when I started my career was how do we get the data? And now the trick is which data do we use, right? Because it's so much data is available. It's very difficult. And now, as you talk about the global landscape, my role here is to talk to you about what's going on in the world. We also have to normalize it across the countries. So what might have a lot of data available in Japan may not have that much data available in Thailand, or other regions. And so our job is to not just look at the glut and the over, abundance of data, but it's also to look at, the capability of what that data does and is it accessible? Our goal, at Coface is to make it a normalized process and models across the world. So if you work with us, the data is the same. It doesn't matter which countries. When you get an assessment from us, it's the same. It doesn't matter which country. we do it all the same. And so it makes it very complicated because we're in 208 countries and we need to normalize that model. So from my perspective, you know, the exponential growth and the availability of information is amazing, but then it puts more pressure on us to choose what the right information is, which is the most predictive, and, you know, how we want to use it. And then also the stability of that information from social media, which could be maybe true or not true. It's very difficult to say these days, from digital transactions that are being provided by suppliers like financial institutions and governments. You know, also the open data, the public data that's now being made available by all these governments. This is all new, and it's been happening over the last several years. And so they don't discern or discriminate what data that they're going to put out. They just make it available. And so for us, you know, if you want to look at the impact in the market, is there's a huge volume of information. And now the question becomes, you know, who can you trust that's taking the right information, making it available the right way, using it as a predictive source, and then making it available for your decisions. You know, I think that's the trick in the recipe. And to me, it's just like when you make a good recipe, you know, people buy food and they like it. You know, the chef took the time to put the exact ingredients in for what they're going to like and the flavor, and enhance their experience. It's the same thing with data. So I would say that the outcome is too much data. How do you organize it? And how do you decide which is the right data for the decision that you need to make?
Great insights, AJ. Great. And translating that global vision that you just mentioned to Latin America, I would ask Leonardo, how do you see that outlook in the influence in risk assessment, Leo? Can you explain your views and your opinion on that?
Yes, Humberto, thanks. To be aligned with AJ, that completely agree with him. And the type of different data we have all over the region, is very difficult to normalize the model all over the Latin America, because we don't have the same data for all countries. So we can build new ways, new tools of building the risk assessment for each country. The available raw data is totally different for each country. So in one hand, we have opportunities. In other hand, we have challenges. As opportunities, I can say that we have a rapid digital transformation here in Latin America, and increasing access to alternative data sources such as mobile, financial technology, offering new avenues for more inclusive and dynamic risk models. Okay. By the other hand, the data fragmentation, inconsistent quality, and varying levels of infrastructure poses challenges for comprehensive analysis. I think we have some examples here, and we can detail later, but Open Finance in Brazil offers new ways to increase the understanding of the companies, as we have new data sources, new ways of evaluate, assess the company risk model. Understand? In the past, we had complete relying in balance sheet data, for example. Now we have these new alternatives, and we can have a huge increment of this insight to analyze a company, for example.
I see perfect, Leonardo. Só pequeno adendo antes de continuar. Eu estou vendo alguns colegas brasileiros pedindo tradução para o inglês. Para os colegas brasileiros que precisarem de tradução do inglês para o português, cliquem no globinho abaixo, escolham o idioma português e aí coloquem o balanço totalmente para o intérprete enquanto uma pessoa que estiver falando com inglês. E vocês podem manejar isso da melhor forma possível. Agora a Patrícia e eu vamos falar em português, vocês podem colocar o globinho para o outro lado e ouvir o áudio original, ok? Muito bem, legal, Léo, obrigado pelo insight e pelas contribuições até aqui. Mas eu queria ouvir também um pouquinho da Patrícia. Bem-vinda, Patrícia, obrigado por estar com a gente hoje. Eu queria que você se apresentasse um pouquinho, apresentasse a Like, né, que você representa, e contasse para a gente um pouco como é que você vê aqui o processo de dados na análise, né? Como é que, a partir disso que eles estão contando, né, para a gente, da dificuldade de achar os dados, de harmonizar todos esses dados, qual que é o desafio de dados que você vê na Lycra hoje em dia?
Bom dia a todos. Eu sou a Patrícia, estou na Lycra há 3 anos e meio, mas eu tenho experiência na área há 15 anos, trabalhei em diversos segmentos. A Lycra é uma empresa global que atua na parte têxtil, né? E ela tem duas divisões de negócio: Apparel, que é a parte de vestuário, e High Fit, que é a parte de personal care. É uma empresa consolidada aí com mais de 65 anos no mercado. E quando eu vim para a Lycra, nós precisamos reestruturar a parte de crédito e cobrança, e nós temos um volume da nossa carteira de clientes que nós exportamos para vários países: Argentina, Colômbia, Peru, Uruguai, Equador, enfim. E aí, como todos sabem, né, o ano passado, final de 2003, começo de 2004, nós enfrentamos aí um cenário com toda essa situação política da Argentina, né, que nos impactou grandemente, né? E nós não atuávamos com seguro de crédito porque a nossa carteira de clientes é uma carteira saudável, a gente não tem inadimplência. Porém, devido a todo esse contexto e para poder mitigar riscos, eu fiz uma busca no mercado, entrei em contato com várias seguradoras e nenhuma, claro, concedeu seguro de crédito para a Argentina. Então, eu tive que buscar algo de diferencial, né? Hoje, no DNA da Lycra, o que a Lycra busca? Inovação. Inovação, agilidade, acesso a informações rápidas, precisas, né? E eu fiz uma busca num outro órgão de crédito que disponibilizava um relatório, né, dos dados atuais do cliente, não simplesmente das demonstrações financeiras, com um delay aí, com um prazo de 15 dias. Porém, eu tinha necessidade naquele momento de ter um retorno rápido. Eu precisava decidir se eu ia vender ou não ia vender. Eu precisava de agilidade de informação. E aí foi quando entrei em contato com a Coface, né, que é uma empresa conhecida globalmente, né, e já ouvi também bons históricos da empresa de outros locais que eu trabalhei. E aí, dessa abordagem, eu posicionei a nossa necessidade de ter mais informações consolidadas, confiáveis, com mais agilidade, para me ajudar no processo de tomada de decisão, de seguir vender, né, e monitorar esses clientes, que foi a peça-chave também para que eu pudesse tomar uma decisão mais assertiva. Então, hoje, não só fazer uma análise, não só ter o contato com o comercial, porém, o relatório da Coface, né, as informações que eu tenho da Coface de crédito e de monitoramento me auxiliam numa tomada de decisão mais eficaz. Então, nós implementamos isso para os nossos clientes estrangeiros, né? E para alguns clientes grandes locais que, por questão interna do cliente, não compartilham as demonstrações financeiras. Porém, são clientes de longa data, né? Que compram com a Lycra. Então, eu não posso assumir esse risco sem ter um suporte, um embasamento. Então, a lei de uma visita técnica que nós fizemos com o cliente, tem esse suporte da Coface, seja com monitoramento, seja com relatório de análise.
Muito legal, legal, Patrícia. Muito obrigado aí pelo depoimento. E AJ, she just mentioned some challenges that she's facing regarding the macroeconomic risk and how to operate in a very risk country. What's your thoughts on that? What kind of challenges you see that companies face implementing the data-driven decisions around the world?
Yeah, I think it's a very good point, and it is the biggest challenge. One of the biggest challenges I took, Umberto, when I took this role was moving from one country to 208 countries. As you can imagine, taking the responsibility over 208 countries around the world meant there was one huge issue, which was inconsistency. You know, not just on the availability of the information, but the quality of the same information across the regions. And so, the challenge is going to be normalizing that information for your decisioning in one place. So what normally happens is a company in Brazil or in Canada or in the US, they have a portfolio of global companies, and it could be 10 countries, 20 countries, 5 countries. Normalizing the decisioning so you're making consistent decisions means that the information coming out from all those countries has to be modeled the same way and managed the same way. And the biggest challenge I faced when I started Coface 3 years ago was we have a normalized model for 208 countries, which means it doesn't matter where you get this, where the country that the data is coming from. When you get our score, it's normalized. And so the effort that we have to put into getting the consistency in the data and normalizing it means we have to put in a large infrastructure. So as you can imagine, Leonardo started here last year. We recruited him to take over Latin America. We also recruited people, data leaders for Asia, for Europe, for North America. We have 7 to 15 data leaders around the world that are managing the inconsistencies locally. And not only just the inconsistencies, but there's other data such as, the public information systems are different, the judicial systems are different, the regulatory decisioning from all these different countries is different. There's political changes that happen all of the time. So managing this stuff locally with a mandate for normalization means that we have the ability to do that. And so if I was a company, the biggest challenge they're going to have is, one is, are their sources normalized? And if they're not, they have to change the decisioning process on one country to another, which makes it way more complicated for them, way more complicated. And so our model was to say, we don't want to change that. And interestingly enough, we're talking about business information, but we're also an insurer, a global trade insurer. So we're using the same decisions ourselves when we're looking at the insurance across all of these countries and going from one country to another. And so you can imagine, we want to make sure that process is as normalized as possible, because you don't want to make a bad decision, and you don't want to have a separate decisioning model for each country. It actually adds to the complexity, huge complexity to what you're doing. So the idea within a company, what I would say is, if I was on the other side and not providing the data, is, the silos within your company, are they capable of handling, different decisioning models coming from different countries? If they're not, it's going to be hugely complicated for you. And then can you trust the quality of the normalized models? Because, you do have to make adjustments to try and keep everything the same, which means you might have to use less information, because in this case, less is more. If the less information you have, the more you can normalize it. And one example is, we have real estate data available in some European countries, but not available from Asian countries. So regionally, they can use that information, but globally, we can't provide it in a consistent way because it's not available for every region, And so I would say the biggest challenge, if I left it at one thing, would be, having to avoid making different models for different countries to change in that decisioning process.
Totally, AJ. I can imagine how hard it is to harmonize all the data that you just mentioned, and how hard it is to have some decisions with data sets that are different across regions or business types. Totally. And Leonardo, according to this point that AJ is just mentioning us, do you see a specific challenge for Latin America in terms of how analyzing credit in here?
Sure. As I said before, the data fragmentation is the main issue. We have, for example, inconsistent data availability across countries. We have, for example, in Brazil, detailed data sets, and in other countries, in the smaller economies, this creates uneven insights for risk models. So other smaller countries that we have limited infrastructure to capture data makes it difficult to analyze. So we deep dive into the possible data available in these regions in order to bring more insights. So we have this part of the not having the same availability of data. the limited infrastructure in rural areas. In case of Andes, like Andes and parts of Central America, we have poor connectivity that hinders the collection of real-time data for accurate assessments. We have also the problem of low data literacy, because many organizations still faces the lack of expertise to analyze and utilize advanced data sets effectively. So we in COFACE provide this ability to make this assessment more available for companies. So these are the main challenge, but we have also opportunities, as I said before. For example, the rapid digital adoption. In Mexico, we have a huge growth of e-commerce that create a wealth of transactional data, allowing business to better predict customer behavior. Open bank initiatives here in Brazil that offers a lot of financial information about companies. The new methods of payments here in Brazil, like Pix. So all the data we have collected by the government and having the possibility to collaborate with the government to receive this information, we have totally different insights about the companies, not only based on balance sheet, as I said before. So we have both challenges and opportunities. A lot of challenges, we can say, like Jay mentioned, because the most important thing that we provide here at COFACE is the risk assessment and the models that we offer to the market. So to normalize this is a huge effort need to take, you know.
Great. So I see kind of a consensus. I mean, globally in Latin America, the different data sets are the main challenge. And I'd like to ask AJ, so considering this lack of data or different data sets, are there some emerging trends in data utilization? How companies and how we are assessing risk with these type of different data sets?
Yeah, I think alternative data is starting to be a very huge topic. And you know, it means a lot of things, Umberto. That it's a very generic statement to say alternative data. But like Leonardo said, standard practice, even let's think 100 years ago, if you wanted to assess a company and you're a bank, you look at their balance sheets. Accounting is not new. You know, accounting has been happening for a long time. So we all know we can make the basic decisions off of the information that everybody's comfortable with, right? So then you get to the second point, which is, you know, emerging trends are new types of information that we're not familiar with. And imagine just in the world, if you even forget about our data, you know, they're tracking everything right now. GPS is tracking this, phones are tracking this, and imagine all the information coming on your phones. Imagine all the information coming from open banking. You know, there's an interesting piece of information I was assessing for a long time on open banking, where everybody assumes, you know, for open banking, you can just get the same information that you are getting, but maybe more real time. You know, it's the frequency of when you're getting it, not just what you're getting, right? So you used to get the information monthly or when it was published, but now you can get it real time because you can see the balance of a company every day. So now, not only can you see the balance of the company every day, you can see every transaction that happened and make new calculations based on forecasts. So it's not just the amount of information, but it's the frequency of the information that's changing. And so if you take all of this into consideration when you're making your decisions, you know, the frequency could have a huge impact. And I'm not even talking about real time, but I'm saying now we can look at daily balances daily, monthly balances daily. You know, you can look at all of this information at the second. Doesn't mean it's going to provide value. And that's the trick. So the trends are, you know, there's newest data. So let's look outside of open banking. There's reviews online on companies. How well are they performing? You know, we found a trend in Amazon in Canada, where we found one of their distribution companies, their shipping companies, was going under without the data. We found it in reviews because people were complaining that their shipments weren't coming. And it triggered an evaluation, which was, why isn't the shipping company coming? Is there something wrong with the roads? Is there something wrong in the community? What's happening? And then they realized the company went under before the data told us they were going to go under. So the reviews were a trigger online that something's going on with this company. So if you think about your question on the emerging trends, it's actually amazing the things that you can use these days between reviews, real estate information, ESG, new financial types of transactions, like I mentioned, getting daily balances or getting, hourly balances, shipping data that's available now, so you can see what's available in their shipping, the ingredients to companies. So I'll talk about that one in just a second. But there's also weather and natural disasters. Look at what's going on in LA. Look what's going on around the world. What's the impact of the supply chain because of those things that are happening? Those things can all be considered in a model now, because the complexity of our ability to handle more sophisticated models with more data is higher. But the predictiveness of it, that's the key. That's the key on what it's going to do. And one of the items I added was this concept of ingredients. It's easy to track a company and know their financials, but if the key ingredient to a Tesla battery is lithium, and we know there's something going on in the lithium market, now we can actually look at the upstream and downstream impacts using alternative access to this data. Shipping, we had those shipping issues at the Panama Canal or in Asia and the Middle East, and ships aren't making it through. What's the impact on certain sectors of the market, and how does that downstream, upstream impact companies? So the availability of information, I think the emerging trends is you have to consider all of it and maybe consider none of it. The reality is it aligns to your specific decision. One decision I'm making today might use that type of information, but the decision I'm making for next year doesn't need it. And so if there's a problem in the United States and things are burning down, what's the impact specifically on an industry, and how long is it going to impact that industry? And do you use the information now, or maybe you don't use it? So I think the emerging trend is this flexibility in your ability to take the information and do something with it that's valuable. It's nice to have, and some things are nice to have, a lot of information about things. On my phone, I get all these statistics, but I don't care about most of them. Whatever they tell me, it's like, okay, that's nice to know, but did it change anything for me? Did it change my behavior? And so getting all the statistics, getting all the information is great, but disseminating it down to the key items that are going to help your decisioning, I think that's the emerging trend in risk, which is finding the piece and using it when you need to.
Great insight, AJ. Thank you. Very, very nice. Aí, Patrícia, o que eu tô sentindo aqui do papo, né, é que a dificuldade de obter os dados, muitos dados alternativos novos. O AJ acabou de falar esse negócio super interessante de estatística, é super legal, mas assim, tá mudando alguma coisa no meu negócio, na minha vida real? Você que está aqui como a empresa que toma risco, que está lá empreendendo todos os dias, né? Você pode dar algum exemplo de como foi a utilização dessas decisões baseadas em dados, né? E que tipo de resultado trouxe para o seu negócio? Oi, Patrícia, está com a gente?
Oi, você pode repetir, por favor?
Claro,
Que falhou
claro.
aqui.
Sim, sim. O AJ e o Leonardo estavam comentando a dificuldade de achar os dados, né? E de harmonizar esses dados através das regiões. E o AJ, por último, falou de muita estatística aparece para a gente, né? Então a gente tem estatística de tudo acontecendo. Mas muitas das vezes essas estatísticas elas não dão a real mudança do que está acontecendo, né? Então eu queria saber um pouquinho como é que você na Lycra atua nesse sentido, assim, né? Como é que foi? Você podia dar algum exemplo de como é que você usa esses dados todos para tomar as decisões? E que tipo de resultado trouxe para você esse tipo de decisão baseada em dados?
Olha, minha experiência, como eu comentei, né? Eu, assim, costumo trabalhar com várias informações, as informações da COFACE, não só informações financeiras, porque muda, um ano está de um jeito, o outro ano já está totalmente diferente, a gente não tem essa visibilidade. Também, o que conta muito também, que eu consolido junto com a minha análise, também é o parecer comercial, a visita do comercial, o front lá com o cliente, um pouco também da minha sensibilidade com a carteira do cliente, todo o histórico que ele tem com a Lycra. Então, todas essas informações juntas e consolidadas me dá um embasamento, né, para tomar uma melhor decisão de crédito, seja conceder um crédito ou seja reter e não seguir com novas vendas. E um ponto interessante que todo esse trabalho que nós fizemos, né, junto com a COFACE, ele acabou se estendendo para as outras regiões da The Lycra Company, né? Então, hoje, uma iniciativa nossa aqui do Brasil, devido a um ponto de dor, né, da situação da Argentina, que foi o gatilho para todo esse início aí desses trabalhos. Então, hoje a Lycra trabalha globalmente, né, com a COFACE. Então, a COFACE atende o México, os Estados Unidos, o pessoal da Ásia. Então, a gente tem uma interação, né, e a equipe aí da COFACE também concedeu todo esse suporte e hoje a ferramenta é utilizada por todos. Então, isso ajudou no aumento das vendas, de tomar uma decisão melhor, de seguir ou não, se é um problema financeiro, uma situação pontual, né, devido a essas análises de dados. Então, nos permitiu seguir com mais segurança no processo de mitigação de riscos.
Pô, super legal, super legal. Quer dizer, então, puxa, ajuda realmente, né, no core do negócio, né, de fazer o negócio crescer ou proteger os financeiros. Legal.
Sim,
E tem
proteger a
alguma lista?
empresa, né, nesse ponto, né, de também
Super.
não sair concedendo crédito sem ter uma análise mais criteriosa, né? Eu acho que o importante também não é só ter a informação, mas também entender o que você está analisando, né? Então, ser bem crítico em todas as informações, né, para poder seguir com a melhor decisão de crédito.
Legal. Top, muito bom, muito bom. E nesse processo que você estava explicando para a gente, né, da adoção da solução no Brasil e depois para os outros países que você estava comentando, né, qual que foi que tipo de lição você aprendeu, né? Assim, teve boas práticas que
Sim.
você percebeu, tal? Comenta um pouquinho para a gente, assim, como é que foi o trabalho, né, fazer a mágica acontecer de fato.
Olha, eu acho que teve vários insights aí. Para o pessoal de fora, aqui no Brasil, a gente tem órgãos que a gente consegue consultar a informação de um cliente local em tempo real, né? Mas os clientes estrangeiros lá, as outras regiões da Lycra, tinha, né, como base somente as demonstrações financeiras e parecer comercial. Então, a gente conseguiu adicionar essas informações da COFACE em tempo real, né, atualizada, para ajudar as outras regiões numa melhor decisão de crédito, tá? A mesma coisa aqui para o Brasil na questão dos clientes estrangeiros, né? Então, nos permitiu ter uma visibilidade melhor em tempo real, né? Do que realmente, como está a situação do cliente. E isso também nos ajudou, né, em algumas questões como redução da inadimplência, saber se a inadimplência no final de 2003 e começo de 2004, que a gente tinha no nosso contas a receber, era só Argentina. Era só Argentina. E aí a gente conseguiu trabalhar durante o ano, né, com todos esses monitoramentos, as análises, enfim. Tanto que hoje o nosso diretor global de crédito e risco, ele até fala, você pode classificar sua carteira de clientes lá, o rating no sistema, de acordo com o relatório da COFACE. Então, trouxe confiança e credibilidade para a melhor decisão de liberar um crédito ou não, né? Então, a gente identifica e redução também de um trabalho manual, né? Que às vezes pode ocorrer erros também, né? Então, com toda essa era digital, informação de fácil acesso, a gente consegue trabalhar melhor essas questões.
Super legal, super legal. Muito bom, muito bom. Well, I think we talked a lot about the challenges and trends, but I'd like to hear from AJ about innovations. So I think you're well positioned to tell us, AJ, what do you see in terms of innovation for credit scoring and analytics shaping supplier reports?
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and you know, we kind of touched on the items before, which is, you know, getting a lot of information is one thing, being able to manage it and process it is another, right? And then the type of information that you're getting. So I would say from traditional models, credit scoring models, to models that are being developed and that are developed today, I think the behavioral aspects are going to be a huge impact on that. Like I mentioned with open banking, like getting a little bit more information in a faster time frame, and the reliability of that information improves the reliability of the model. You know, everybody knows the garbage in, garbage out. If the data coming in isn't good, the data going out is going to be just as bad. It's not magic, you know? And so the idea is with the improvements in data quality, with the improvements in the type of data, the models themselves, you know, there's not a real huge innovation, to be honest. It's the quality of the information and the predictiveness of the information that you're choosing to put into them is what's really changing. We're going to have a separate section later where we, you know, we'll talk about the AI, but the idea is, you know, how much manpower can you put into the reliability of these models? That's the key. And that the key innovation from my perspective is the ability to be predictive means, you know, the items that are available predict something. And so choosing that, having the available information, is the key. The innovations in the models themselves, there's a big one. The biggest one is how many iterations can you run to test your theories, you know? And that's limiting. It's limiting to your ability to crunch the information and how much information and how it changes while you're you know, assessing the model reliability. So I would say now that we're moving into this new world of infinite data, big data, and we have to move the models into a world that matches that, right? Run them faster and make sure they can be reassessed and adjusted, make the adjustments, you know, more quickly so that, you know, the performance is being maintained and the reliability is there. So the old way of doing this, if you can remember, took months. You know, somebody wants a model, you have to tell the analytics team, and 6 months later, a model comes out and you have to use it for 2 years. those days are gone. We don't need to do that anymore. And so the innovation is the ability to take new information, update the models, and tweak and trigger those models to, you know, to your liking. I think that's where the world is going today. And interestingly enough, I was at another seminar where we were talking about the quality of the models. Imagine the world we're going to, which is you create the model on the fly for the situation and the decision you're trying to make. Instead of pre-building all of these models, the model is being developed as your decision, as your question is being developed. So that's where imagine it's going, and where it was 6 months to create a model. In between now is this, you know, frequency of adjustments, which is way more flexible than it used to be.
Totally, AJ. I can remember years ago the scenario that you just described. How it took too long to develop model, and then you have to stick with it lots of time because it doesn't make sense, or it doesn't make sense at all to change it quickly, because otherwise you won't have the ROI on your investment, of course. Great. And Leonardo, how do you see this in Latin America? I mean, do you have any success case or any examples of well-succeeded cases in Latin America on how to use this data-driven decision analytics that JJ just mentioning?
Sure, Humberto. I will move to the universe of personal data now, just to give an example, a clear example of that. In the past, if we were supposed to get a credit, the financial institutions will analyze you based on the negativations and financial restriction, right? Now, as the entry of the positive registration that we call here as cadastro positivo, we have a lot of information of payments. So if you pay your bills in time, you have a good score. So I know that the credit bureaus now and the financial institutions that use these models utilize much more information about the positive entries than the negativations. So this gives a lot of opportunity to the unbanked population, for example. If you don't have anything in the financial institution to track your records, how can I know or how can we know about you? Based on your bills, for example, if you pay your utility bills, your phone bill, we can know much more about you. So this is a clear example of how the changes are changing with the offer of new data. And also, as AJ mentioned, the models that are very adaptive to these new entries, these new data sets. For example, the use of machine learning models that with new fine adjustments, we can improve this assertiveness, for example, to analyze Umberto's credit score. So we have a lot of transformation happening especially in the region regarding personal data mainly. Here in Brazil, I would say that we have a lot of improvements in this field.
Great. So your testimonial here, Leo, just gave us the opportunity to ask AJ about AI, which is the buzz question, right, AJ? I think AI is always on the table. What are your thoughts on that? How do you see this for credit analysis in our environment here?
Yeah, it's really amazing if you think about, you know, what's been developed and what's been happening. AI has kind of always been around a little bit, but making the more mainstream availability of AI. And, you know, ChatGPT was a big one that came out. You know, everybody's using that now, and my kids are using it, and the value of it is amazing. But if you think about it, you know, though here's the way I like to explain it. It's very interesting. So imagine everybody knew Einstein was a genius, right? He was one of the smartest guys to ever live, but he didn't know my birthday unless you tell him. You know, the data has to be there for him to learn something. And so he could be a genius, but he's only as good as the information he has access to. You know, and so when it's the same way with AI, it's unlimited. It's the genius of our times, but it's only as good as the information that has access to. So when my son uses ChatGPT to do a study on the Rwandan crisis of, you know, back in the 90s, it's biased to whatever's available to the AI. It doesn't create new information. It uses what's there, right? And so from my perspective, you know, I don't think it's going to give us the ability to change a lot of the data, historical data that's been there. But what it can do is the point I made before around iterations. You know, imagine they trained an AI model in 10 hours to be the best chess player in the history of the planet in 10 hours. The iterations were millions because it doesn't sleep, it doesn't turn off, it doesn't get tired, it just keeps going. So imagine leveraging that capability, you know, in a model where you can do unlimited iterations, and it's always making the adjustments based on the quality of data to which field might be more important today versus tomorrow because of the quality of information has changed, so that you're still getting the reliability that you can count on. It's really amazing if you look at the capabilities that it's going to bring. I think that for me is the biggest piece. So the other piece of it is reducing the coding. We were mentioning about the 6 months it takes. You know, you don't have to code anymore. You know, my kids, they were advised by the CEO of NVIDIA, the largest company in the world now, that people don't need to learn how to code anymore like we used to, because AI can do natural language coding in any language that you want. You know, imagine the capabilities that brings us. So, you know, the reduced coding, you know, the infinite iterations, you know, the changing the traditional method of analysis. I think AI is going to be amazing, but it's not just in the model side. Even on the data quality side, we're using it today. How do we identify changes in quality in the data? You know, the traditional model is people and reporting. And imagine now you have AI bots that are running through your data all the time, never turning off, making sure the quality of interaction. So before, we would say you get two addresses, you know, from a company from two different sources, and we can ensure the address is right. Well, the AI can look at a lot more than two to validate, you know, the address of a company. So availability of the online information, the information coming from all of the sources, being able to process it, all of this stuff makes the new world of insights amazing. You know, taking it to a whole other level that, you know, we've never seen before. So from my perspective, it's going to hugely improve the reliability. It's going to find correlations and causations that we couldn't find because we weren't patient to do the iterations required, you know, to find these kind of correlations and causations. I think it's going to change the way we even analyze the scores. So imagine if you have an AI that creates the score, you can have an AI that absorbs and uses the score just as easily. You know, you can have them talking to each other. So how you use it and when to use it, when not to use it, you know, all of those discrepancies, all of that is going to be managed a lot more efficiently. And so I have very high hopes for, you know, the ability for us to incorporate. And you know, at COFAS, we had an AI conference last year where we talked about where are we going to use it and how we were going to use it. And, you know, people are comfortable with chatbots and the things that they see. You know, chatbots on a website help you as a personal, you know, take the place of a person to help you, you know, answer questions and do things like that. But imagine if you have a chatbot on your app to help you decipher the score that you are given and the best way to use it within your company. You know, they can be used on all sides of this. It's not a one-way street. You know, it's a multi-lane highway. And so I think it's going to have amazing capabilities for us, but you don't want to get overwhelmed. So companies have to pick their battles and maybe discern it down to what the points I made before. Remember, which was when I said using the right information for your decision, for the decision you need to make right now. What is the right way to make that? And so, you know, killing a canary with a cannon may not be the best solution for a company. Maybe it's too much and you need to bring it down. And so what we've done is we're using the capability within our scores to improve the reliability. We're using it to improve our data quality. We're using it to improve the modeling and the way that we're leveraging and choosing data to bring costs down. So all of that's being taken care of on the score side. But you know, ingesting it, I think that'll be a new world, which is how do you take the information and leverage it using AI, I think is going to be the new frontier. Not just creating the answer, but leveraging the answer. So I'm really excited about AI. I've gotten very deep into it, you know, in terms of what's happening in the world and the different use cases. And I find that it's going to get more and more interesting as we proceed. But we've started to see it, and you're going to notice a lot of changes coming in the next couple of years.
Totally, AJ. Great analogy that you just made with Einstein and the data available. Great. So thank you so much for that. But every time I hear from AI, I also hear the question, well, what's the regulation about? Are you able to use it right away? Do you have to obey some ethics or some regulations? And I'd like to hear from Leonardo. Leonardo, do you see any regulations in Latin America or impact for data analysis that we should be paying attention to?
Sure. The clear impact is the operational cost. Increases operational costs and complicate cross-border data integration for multinational companies like us, for example, in COFAS. I cannot move a data from Brazil to another country without obeying a regulatory local law, like the LGPD, for example. If I use some information of personal data, I cannot move this data from Brazil to France for example, without obeying certain limitations. Okay, this is one of the problems. We have also different frameworks across countries. So it's a huge work we have to do and to use the same rule for each country here in Latin America, for example. This inconsistency creates challenge for business operating across multiple markets like us. But we have opportunity too, because on the other hand, the compliance-driven innovation force the companies and all the population, the citizens, to ensure accuracy and reliability about the data to use in risk assessments. Standardizations, we need to have standardizations in mature markets like Brazil, Mexico, Chile, Colombia. And we have also the opportunity of open data initiatives. Like I said, we talk about the open finance, for example. But open finance, we need to get in consentment with the other company that offers the data. We just don't need the access to their financial statements free, right? We need to get the consentment. This is a way to organize the ecosystem. So otherwise, we'll be in total trouble regarding the misuse of data, fraudulent use of data, for example. So I think the compliance, the regulatory laws in Latin America are growing, and this brings us some very good points in terms of standardization and the good use of information. But certainly we have increasing operational costs involved in it.
I see, perfect. Thank you for that. E aí, bom, a gente ouviu um pouco, né, então, da tendência da AI, a gente ouviu um pouco o Leonardo aqui falando da regulação e de como ela impacta os negócios e do esforço de seguir essa regulamentação. E eu queria ouvir da vida real, né, então, quem está tomando crédito lá, que nem a Patrícia, né? Como é que foi a implementação do dado aqui, né? A gente ouviu da tendência, inovação, da regulação, Patrícia. Eu queria que você contasse para a gente, tá bom, mas na vida real, como é que foi a implantação disso e qual foi o tipo de resultado que você pudesse compartilhar com a gente aqui na tomada de decisão da sua empresa?
Bom, diante desse início dos trabalhos aí com a COFACE, né, a gente conseguiu trabalhar em parceria aí junto com as informações da COFACE e a área comercial, tá? Reduzindo a nossa inadimplência que estava na Argentina, devido a todo esse contexto aí político, né? Seguir também com novas vendas, então não perder os clientes, né? Porque senão você pode criar uma ruptura aí no relacionamento. Então a gente foi trabalhando em paralelo, reduzindo essa inadimplência, que não foi por questão financeira e sim política, porém preservando também esse relacionamento, tanto com o cliente e com o comercial. Então, isso nos permitiu seguir com maior eficiência e maior segurança nesse ponto, né? Tanto que agora, com todo esse trabalho que a gente fez aí com a COFACE, a gente atua também com outros países além da Argentina, né? Colômbia, Peru. Então, a gente cascateou toda essa operação para as outras entidades.
Maravilha, maravilha. Bom, pessoal, aqui nós temos ainda algumas perguntas que eu acho que ainda são pertinentes para a gente explorar o assunto, mas a gente está acabando o tempo, né? E eu estou vendo que no chat tem muitas perguntas da plateia. Então, o que eu proponho aqui? Que a gente só possa concluir essa visão da implementação e depois eu me comprometo aqui com vocês de pegar essas perguntas que estão no chat, direcionar aqui para os nossos convidados e a gente envia as respostas por e-mail para vocês, tá bom? Então, continuem fazendo as perguntas no chat. Infelizmente, são muitas, a gente não vai conseguir passar por todas, mas depois a gente responde por e-mail para vocês, a gente pede a opinião dos nossos convidados sobre elas, tá bom? Muito bem. Leonardo, coming back to Latin America, I think that I would like to hear from you if you have if you can talk with us about the strategies and how businesses are adopting data-driven decisions in their businesses, and if there are any types of results in Latin America that you can share.
I think the most important thing the business in Latin America can do about data-driven decision making, Humberto, could be some points that we face as trouble, and when I mentioned the introduction. For example, invest in data-driven and data infrastructure and technology. For example, adopt cloud computing solutions to improve scalability and cost efficiency, as we do. We need to implement data integration platforms to consolidate these fragmented data sets we have in different regions. Use of analytic tools like the AI and machine learning that we mentioned before. Implement the data governance practice and give a good knowledge about data literacy for the workforce that works with that. Leverage the alternative data source when we have, like Brazil, we need to take advantage of this new insights coming from positive registration, from open finance, from payment habits that's collected from the government. And most important is to foster the partnerships and collaboration between the companies, between the institutions, the local governments to assess public data sets. We have the example of Argentina that use a lot of agricultural information through the use of satellites. Mexico with the example of the e-commerce. So to gain more insights, even more insights and more assertiveness and risk assessment and credit decision, it's important to companies force partnerships and collaborations, like Patricia has mentioned in her case of Lycra with us. So this is very important for us.
Great, thank you. Bom, e aí falta um minutinho, pessoal, e de novo, estão surgindo as questões aqui, depois a gente envia por e-mail para vocês. Mas para finalizar o nosso webinar aqui, eu queria ouvir um pouquinho da Patrícia, né? Passou por toda essa jornada de análise dos provedores, de implementação, de convencer a empresa de como tomar essas decisões baseadas em dados, passando por todo esse tema da inovação, regulação que a gente conversou aqui. Patrícia, você que vive a vida real aqui, conta pra gente, né? Então, conselho você daria para quem está nessa jornada aqui para implementar aí esse tipo de solução que você colocou aqui, né? Como que você daria de conselho para quem está nessa jornada de melhorar as decisões baseadas em dados?
Olha, Alberto, eu acho que hoje, como tudo está muito dinâmico e a informação a gente tem em tempo real, eu acho que hoje a gente precisa fazer diferente. Nem tudo que você trabalhou ano passado, esse ano vai seguir da mesma linha, porque está tudo muito dinâmico. Então, acho que você tem que ser crítico, tem que ver o que mais você pode fazer. Tá, hoje eu tenho um relatório que me dá suporte, mas daqui 6 meses, daqui 2 meses, o que mais eu posso fazer de novo para me trazer mais segurança ainda, para me dar uma melhor decisão? Que mais que eu posso agregar para o meu negócio? Então, foi esse meu mindset lá no passado. Hoje eu faço dessa forma, que é uma maneira meio que tradicional de análise. Mas o que eu poderia ter feito para melhorar todo esse contexto? Né, assim, eu estou enfatizando mais a questão da Argentina, porque está mais em evidência, né, e porque o nosso maior volume está concentrado lá, mas isso foi o gatilho. Então, o que eu poderia ter feito? Então, foi essa parte mais crítica de trazer algo novo para o negócio, para que pudesse me ajudar a trazer novas soluções para o negócio. Né? Então, é esse mindset que eu acho que ajuda, né, no processo, na operação, né, no operacional ali, de tomar decisão, né, de não conceder um crédito errado, né, para um cliente que você olha a demonstração financeira está boa, mas atrasa o pagamento. né? Porque a gente tem situações inversas também, né? Que tem os dados que não são tão bons, né? Mas efetua pagamento de forma pontual. Então, tem várias variáveis que você precisa entender um pouco, né? E aí e seguir em frente. Eu acho que essa parceria aí nos ajudou a seguir até aqui, e agora a gente vai trabalhar para ter novas soluções daqui para frente, né? Sempre pensar no que mais a gente pode trazer para o negócio, né? Para agregar captura de valor, né? Para inovar.
Ótimo, muito legal, Patrícia, obrigado. Muito obrigado pelos conselhos aí. Well, guys, pessoas, gente boa aqui do Brasil, nossos companheiros de Latinoamérica, muitas graças a todos. Thank you all. Obrigado a todos que participaram com a gente. Nosso tempo esgotou. Queria agradecer a presença do AJ. Thank you, AJ, for being with us today. Thank you, Leonardo, for being with us today. Patrícia, muito obrigado pela ajuda, pelos depoimentos, pela visão prática de como está sendo aqui. Como disse, muitas perguntas no chat. Eu vou direcionar para os nossos palestrantes, eles vão responder e a gente envia de volta por correio, por e-mail para todos vocês. Espero que vocês tenham um bom dia, espero que tenha sido um conteúdo de qualidade para vocês aproveitarem nos seus negócios e desejo um bom restante de dia e bons negócios para todos. Thank you all, have a nice day, graças com todos, que tenham um bom dia, tchau.
Tchau.